right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Let's start that conversation. We call it here Youth and Politics. If they form 75% of the population, their voice surely is important when it comes to political decisions, and we'll find out from them what we call here asking the horse. You ask straight from the horse's mouth, find out what they're thinking, what are their thoughts in terms of the leadership of the country, what are they looking for in the new leaders. We'd like to hear from you as well at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. Let me introduce my guests real quick, beginning from my right, Humulker Harun. She works for the Raila Odinga Secretariat. Thank you for making time. Kennedy Omulo is here, Director of Strategy and Political Affairs, ANC Party. Asante sana for making time. On my left is Charles Karondo, Youth Leader, Radical Youth Movement. Thank you for making time. And Gakenia Kinyuti, she's a leader, a women league leader at the Democratic Party. All right, thank you so much for making time. Let's start off with the dailies and start off with the Standard front page. Omula, I'll start with you on this. Sagana 3 aftershocks, they say. Before we get into the Daily Nation, what is your reaction from what happened at the Sagana declaration? Were you surprised? Were you shocked? Does it change the political direction?
I knew you'd start with me, but I would be gladly able to say that, you know, what we expected did not come out because, you know, Kenyans were very anxious and they were really waiting for either an earthquake, second to what happened with Salem Davadi's earthquake. But we came to realize that it was just a normal discussion, which as Kenya Kwanza, we are not so much keen on. Because when the president talked about supporting Raila Odinga, it is something that has been there in the offing, and Kenyans were aware that that was the direction. So there's nothing new from Sagana. In regards to, you know, saying Ruto stole some things there and there, so I think without evidence, because, you know, the Constitution requires the president. President is supposed to uphold, respect, and protect the Constitution. It's the symbol of unity, national unity. He has all the powers, and he ought to have started the initiative of taking these cases to DCI and the relevant bodies, because we have independent institutions that are supposed to act and investigate such kind of allegations. Okay. So these are stories that has been there before in 2018. People have been saying that, talking about the dams, people have been talking about other scandals, but we are yet to see whether the government will take keen interest and seriousness in dealing with this kind of issues. Okay. Yeah. Umi, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean,
is there any significant change from the time the president made the declaration?
I mean, that's I followed the Sagana discussions, and it's very rare to, you know, have a country where you know, the president, who in his own right has, you know, his own voice and the decision to make on who to vote for. Yeah. And I wouldn't call it like a directive he gave. It was more like an opinion on how he can guide, you know, because it's his responsibility to hand over the country to the person he feels the country is safe with. So I'm listening the words of Omulo, and if I get it right, up until, you know, the start of the year, the discussion was always, there was that slight hope that, you know, the president might actually support his DP, and the camp kept saying it, we kept hearing it, you know. But now, when my colleague sits here and says, you know, it didn't make much of a difference, I would like to differ, because maybe that's something they did not anticipate for. And for us, we are on a campaign, we welcome every support, regardless of who is offering it. So ours is just to keep doing what we do as we bring everybody on board. Our train is wide enough to carry everybody.
Okay, Mula, I know you want to respond to that directly.
Yes, you see, yeah. You remember there's a time President said that one day you'll be shocked with the person I'll be able to support. And, you know, people were thinking that President would support Fred Matiang'i or somebody else. But, you know, Kenyans are not fools because they are aware. When President said that some people are tangatangering around, already they knew that the bromance that was there between him and Deputy President is already broken. So they knew very well that the person after the handshake that was going to take up the leadership, or the person whom the President was preferring as his presidential candidate, is Raila Odinga. So it's something that Kenyans are aware of and they were expecting. So don't take it as if it is a tithe offering, but it's something that already it was in the offing.
Okay, let me bring in Gakenya on this. Gakenya, were you surprised by the declaration of the President, and what kind of impact does it have for the Mount Kenya region? Okay,
first I would say that I was not surprised anyway. I wish he said something that was a bit a surprise to us. But I have a feeling, because I come from that region, Sagana is our shrine politically. I've attended several Saganas, and I would say that what I expected from this Sagana 3 thing, I didn't get it. Because for me, the reason he went to Mount Kenya and not KICC, because if he was at Kasarani, Uhuru Park, and then says he supports Raila, I wouldn't be surprised. But for me, from the mountain region, I felt like the President should have appealed to me, come to me in a language that is a bit of conversational, and telling me, I know these 2 guys, I know the Deputy President, and I know Honorable Raila. And since I know these 2, my people, I feel that the right person for us as a community would be this one. But for me, I found it like it's more of a directive than an appeal to the people. I'm surprised because he himself was groomed by people from Mount Kenya. First, of course, it is the former president, the late Daniel Moi, that brought him to us. He got his little support in 2002. Before 2007, the late Michuki held his hand, brought him to the Mount Kenya people, and told us, this is the man that I would wish to lead our community. I feel like he's left us like not knowing who is for us after you, because now it seems like to him being able to groom someone, a leader from the Mount Kenya region. For me, I was expecting that he would show us a leader from the Mount Kenya region, not necessarily meaning that this person will become the next president, but at least somebody to fill his gap in the region. Yeah, but either way, it did. So for you, it's the tone of the language. You feel it didn't persuade you. Yeah. It was more like giving instructions. It was more of like giving instructions. Yeah. And then, what is Sagana? He was using what language? So I expected something or someone from Mount Kenya region that he would show us, I've groomed this person, and I feel whichever direction we take, then this man or this woman should be the leader for this region. Even though he did say that his deputy could be a leader in future. So he didn't look at the Mount Kenya region, he was talking about general people. But let me hear what Charles thinks of this. So, were you convinced by the President?
Thank you, Trevor, for having me. First of all, as I said, I represent a radical youth movement. But yes, I belong to a political party. I belong to UDA party. But I am advocating for the youth space and for a thorough change in government. Now, Sagana 3, the President did not disappoint because we basically didn't expect much from him and he didn't deliver much. So we were not disappointed. He did just exactly what we expected from him. Because one, he basically showed the world what he is and what he believes in and what he subscribes to, tribal politics. Because for a president who has led the country for 10 years, we would have expected him to give maybe his scorecard to the country at large. But now when the president goes back to his tribesmen to give his scorecard, to give an endorsement in his mother tongue, and that is not what we would expect of a president. Because, Trevor, I'm wondering, now that President Kenyatta, who united with his deputy, and for the purposes of this discussion, let me quote a Kalenjin, went to Sagana in Mount Kenya, presumably to tell the people of his region why they parted ways with his deputy. What then happens if his deputy also decided to call Asugoiwan to also tell the Kalenjins what happened between him and the president? What happens if all the other leaders, everyone decides to call for a meeting in their local areas? I mean, is that really or truly the route to national unity, Trevor? So the president disappointed us, first of all, as a nation, and as people who believe in national unity. Lastly, he actually confirmed to us what we've known and feared all along, because he said that he made unity with Raila Odinga not to make Raila president, but because Raila had made this country ungovernable. He said, Kikuyus could not do business in Kawangware, Kikuyus could not go to Nyanza or Kisumu and be received at Okamano. But now I had to do a handshake with Raila so that Kikuyus can be able to do business in Kawangware. So what he's telling us that as president, my main business has been to safeguard the interest of Kikuyus, not Kenyans, and to tame this violent man, Raila Odinga. And now that I'm leaving this position as president, the only way we can ensure Kikuyus continue doing business in Kawangware and Kibera and go to Nyanza is to make Raila president so that the violent man can be tamed. So are we ready to elect someone as president for the purposes of taming his violent nature? So the president's address in Sagana was a total disappointment for me as a youth. Finally, he said, we have Muzee, and we have Kijana, and Mimi, I am settling for Muzee. So, Your Excellency, as he settles for Muzee, as a young person, I am not ready to pursue that route. Okay. And anyway, I was not disappointed. He has gone for Mudiaori from home at 90 years. So, backing Raila at 77, I think that's an improvement for him. Okay.
Omulo, this is an interesting discussion that is now starting, and I'd like to hear what Umi also thinks. But did you read this as a tribal kingship sort of conversation, or was it a national conversation? Because many people say that politics is local. You start with convincing your people, and then you move out to the rest of the people. And now we're simply just burying our heads in the sand when we start saying that this is a tribal king.
Trevor, it was not a national discourse because first and foremost, we've been talking about unity. And the president said that when they shook hands, it was a symbol and sign of unity of the country. But Trevor, it cannot be that every election cycle we have discussions or conversations that pit community against each other. We put community or we bring issues that bring, suspicions, that bring, wars, that brings conversations that are not healthy for this country. So, President as an individual has a right to express himself or to speak what he has. But what is not good for the country is the fact that he could talk about some things that he cannot substantiate, that he has not himself, he has not taken an initiative to implement. Because, Trevor, if we are talking about corruption, for example, the president has been saying that he's losing 2 billion per day. And there's a time he even felt desperate that he could not be able to control what is happening in government. Trevor, we have lost 7.8 billion during COVID. We call it under the COVID billionaires. And the president himself assured us that, and even gave directive that within 6 months, he needed these people to be brought to book. And I'm very sure that the investigative agency had already given 15 names of government, senior government officials and business people, whom up to date have not been convicted. I also believe that during the Jubilee reign, we also lost over 791 million shillings on NYS scandal. And these people are still roaming around. Some of them are governors, some of them I saw in Nakuru, they want to run for serious seats. We also lost over 180 million youth fund. Are these people in jail? No. So when you talk about corruption, we are lying to ourselves, because if we cannot take up this initiative and fight corruption, then it is not a national discourse. So what basically was doing, it was just playing the politics of interest. And because they believe that after working with the DP president, and DP being a threat in that region, you know, Kenyans know very well that he's the one who sold Ruto to Mount Kenya, and Ruto had already impregnated, you know, Mount Kenya region, and he did not want them to use P2 or other measures. Now these people are pregnant, and you cannot tell them now to abort and use other means to remove Ruto out of Mount Kenya. So I think that is, because if you look at the tone, you look at the language, you look at how he was very angry, can tell you that there's something going wrong. Okay. So I think it is high time we should now bring other communities together. Because if you look at this country, we have 42 tribes. We are a multi-ethnic community. In fact, the biggest in Africa. In fact, the last time you cannot quantify, you cannot have specific evidence on the number of tribes we have in Kenya. The last one that was done was in 1969. And the one that was done in Kenya census in 2009 had brought it to 111. Ethnic community. So these people need to be brought together. If we are really sure and we are serious that we want to bring this country together, it is not about two communities. It is not about three communities. It is about Kenyans, and it is about the agenda that will uplift the economic development of this country. Okay.
Umi, how is this a tribal discussion, yet he is endorsing someone from a different region?
Exactly my thinking, because if and I would like to maybe take up on that. When the president went back to Sagana to address the community in a language they understand, Trevor, if you come to my home, I would like you to speak Somali, so that you could easily resonate with the people you want to carry the message, who want to carry the message. So when the president went there, we also cannot negate his role as a leader from Mount Kenya as well. So him going back there and saying, this is a person I feel will direct the country towards the right direction, would take off from where I left and add on to more so that we could all benefit as a country, is Honorable Raila Odinga. I don't see that as tribal politics. I see it more of someone who has worked with both candidates, vetted, took his time, and decided this is a person it should go to. And the issue on peace and security and the handshake, when you cannot transact in one area because of how volatile it is of that time, and volatile caused not by any other insecurity but political insecurity, the leaders who are assigned have to come together to agree this is not what is good for our people. Let us come together, sit down, and see how we can move forward. If the president did that, and we very well know that the failure of peace is a threat to our national security, I don't see that as a loss. I see it as a win, because also someday I would want, after Raila Odinga finishes his term, for him to come to another region and say, this is a person I feel can be the president. Yeah. As from where I sit also, like you've said, we're a very diverse community. We're about 44 plus. It has gone to a Kikuyu, we've seen the leadership. It has gone to a Kalenjin, we've seen the leadership. If it comes to another region, and we've already seen the leadership in the candidate who's been endorsed, and the track record is clear, zero corruption, a lot of support for the youth, so much investment for women and young people. I am actually very happy from where I sit, because then I know someday I could be president. Okay. Because it has rotated.
Yeah. Again, is the one who started this conversation, a tribal conversation.
Yes, okay. I never meant that it was tribal per se.
Yeah.
And there is no crime in going back home, because charity begins at home. Yeah. Before President Uhuru went round the nation telling them that he wanted to be president, before he looked for votes from elsewhere, he started home. And let me tell you, politics is local. Before anybody, even anybody else in this country, they start home. In fact, when they are coming on board, they come telling us at home, my people have agreed, and now they have given me the permission. They've declared me, they've really embraced me, and they have given me their blessings to move around the country. It is not tribal. And I wouldn't want to say it is tribal. There is no mistake that President Uhuru used a language that people would understand. Because when you speak to people in their language, it gets more into their hearts than into their minds. So up to that point, I have no problem with his conversation in the Kikuyu dialect. I have no problem with him calling a meeting at Sagana. That is where he started his journey, and it was fine to go tell his people. He actually started by saying, thank you because you gave me the opportunity. I have done ABCD. He was not just showcasing the project he has done in Mount Kenya. In fact, he mentioned the ports, Lamu, Lapset, what have you. That is not in Mount Kenya. So I want us not to diverge into just making things look like just tribal, like he meant for Mount Kenya. That he named a presidential candidate that does not come from that region also tells you it wasn't tribal per se. But as I said, I expected him to show me a way for Mount Kenya. The next thing is that he said, he talked about scandals, the COVID billionaires. We've had molasses in this country. We've had maize scandal. We've had golden bag. We've had giant of corruption issues and cases from all regimes in this country. But what I want to say and ask ourselves is, you said that he introduced Ruto to us and that Ruto has impregnated Mount Kenya. In fact, if my memory serves me right, the president came to us in 2017 and told us, yangu kumi na yake kumi. From where I sit, that is done. Ruto has served yake kumi.
Correct.
And President Uhuru has served yake kumi. However you interpret that, I don't know. Now, people interpret it differently. I have my way of interpreting it. They've served each 10-10. So for me, hakuna deni from us, the Mount Kenya region. 10-10, it is it. He has served 10 as a deputy president. This one is have served 10 as they can go home. And if anybody is legally or constitutionally viable to vie, it is fine. But there is no debt. The other thing is, it is good to follow some history. We are youths, but history is key. Mount Kenya region is known as a region that makes their decision the last minute. Mount Kenya region, I repeat, is known as a region that makes their decision the very last minute. So it's a bit too early for someone to expect or to imagine that someone has impregnated Mount Kenya and it is automatically that they will give birth to a kid from the impregnator or whatever you call it, you know. So it is not right to assume. Our region is known to make decisions the last minute. Like you said, when I look at all these people who are vying, I can see that the two that seem to be leading, and I use the word seem, underlined and in bold, are leaders that have had past history of scandals. Our country is not limited to scandalous leaders. We can still make a decision and go to someone as a country and as the youth. I'm talking to the youth especially. Make your decisions looking at integrity. Leaders who have not been involved in any scandals, because we are not short of leaders, so that we keep talking and discussing about leaders who are full of scandals, leaders who only when they go to stage, they speak a language that can only separate this nation but not bring us together.
Who do you have in mind?
Yeah? I have in mind, we have, in fact, even Mount Kenya region should not behave like we don't have a leader, because qualifications in the Constitution of Kenya, if we have two leaders vying in Mount Kenya. We have J.B. Muturi vying as president under the Democratic Party ticket. We have Governor Wairia, but from where I sit, the most qualified in this country is none other but J.B. Muturi, because he's scandal-free. Anybody who knows a scandal attached to him, bring it on.
Charles?
Thank you, Trevor. You know, Trevor, I said I belong to a political party, but I insist on speaking as a radical youth more than a member of a particular political party, because of certain terms and reasons. One, Trevor, you know, I come from the Mount Kenya region that my friends are addressing here, but I refuse to confine myself to the region of politics, because, Trevor, as a young people in this country and as Kenyans, we must stop sanitizing tribal politics in the name of saying politics is local. Because when people say politics is local, they simply mean politics is tribal. And that is why they'll support tribal leaders in the name of being local. Now, when my sister says that We have tested a person from a Kikuyu tribe, we've tested another from the other tribe. I mean, that means then, Trevor, we should next time also test you not based on what you can do or who you can be, but based on which tribe you come from and whether we have given that tribe an opportunity or not. So I think then we will need 5-term presidency for every tribe, or for the 43 tribes, so that now we can have a tribal balance. You know, now in the mantra of politics is local. But I still insist that the president's Sagana address was tribal. And it remains tribal because of this, Trevor. It is very demeaning of the president, actually, and his office to come from the level of the president of the Republic of Kenya, a person who was elected by Kenyans from all walks of life and from all the counties and tribes of this country, to go back and you know, take himself back to the position of a tribal kingpin to give directions to his tribe. I mean, I would have expected, if Raila is such a good leader and President Kenyatta wants to endorse Raila, I would have expected President Kenyatta to call for, you know, to maybe even call for a meeting in State House and give direction to the country. Because then he leads, in that case, we would have taken him seriously as a leader of this country. But now, when he leaves the office of the president and goes back to being a tribal kingpin, to give direction, not to the country, but to his tribe, what does that say? Or what does that speak about our president? So I did feel for President Kenyatta, and maybe I would even fault his advisors, because they have really demeaned our president for getting him from a very big office to making him a tribal kingpin. Trevor, you might say it's not tribal because Uhuru Kenyatta endorsed Raila, who is not a Kikuyu. But what were his reasons? I mean, Uhuru Kenyatta is telling us, I am endorsing Raila Odinga to protect the interests of Kikuyus. I am a Kikuyu. I know he expects me to feel good about that, you know, and clap and be happy because my interests as a Kikuyu are being protected. But Trevor, when we are crying lower food prices, we are not saying lower food prices for Kikuyus. Trevor, when you are saying the president is appointing old men, when you are saying the youth need jobs, we speak as a youth. But the most unfortunate thing in this nation is that when it comes to political time, it is as if somebody presses the restore factory settings button and all of us mutate back to our tribal cocoons. So the youth stop being youth anymore and they become Mount Kenya youth, Nyanza youth, you know, Rift Valley youth or whoever. The people of this nation, you know, it now stops being a national conversation, and it goes back to our regional politics and our tribal politics. So, Trevor, I still insist that it was a total disappointment for the president to lower himself and go back to the position of a tribal kingpin and to endorse Raila Odinga to us so that he protects the interests of the Kikuyus. So I'm wondering then, what are the stakes of all the other 41 tribes?
Okay.
Now that we want to make Raila so that we protect the interest of the Kikuyus. And I'm saying, as the youth, we cannot allow ourselves to pursue that route.
Okay.
Lastly, allow me to say this lastly. The president says that his deputy is not fit because, you know, of corruption issues here and then such other kind of issues. And the same president was seated at Sagana with KEMSA billionaire thieves. And he's talking about corruption. The president told us that, you know, he was abroad, and after coming back, he would come and tell us about the Pandora Papers and, you know, all those kind of things. Up to today, I think maybe somebody should remind him, probably he forgot, you know, he's a busy man, but somebody should remind our president that he was to give us the list of the KEMSA thieves. Somebody should remind the president that he was to tell us about the Pandora Papers. I mean, and that is what we should do today instead of just discussing about what this person has done or the other. So please, Your Excellency, if by any chance you are watching, or maybe your people are watching, please, somebody remind our president that the 21 days he said lapsed.
Okay.
Just in case you forgot.
All right, to take a quick break here on Daybreak. When we come back now, we talk about youth leadership and integrity. What should the young people be looking for in their leaders? And we've touched on part of it in just a bit, but we'd like to hear your views as well. At Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. We're talking really about 9th of August is coming. What should the youth consider? Why? And should they galvanize within their interests? And how do those interests even look like? All right? That conversation coming up in just a bit, right after the break.